Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Terry Mendez. Have you ever wondered why, despite billions of dollars flowing through the cannabis industry, most cannabis businesses still struggle with access to basic banking services? My guest today has spent his career solving exactly that problem. Terry Mendez is a Wharton-educated CPA, former Big Four executive, business transformation expert, and now CEO of Safe Harbor Financial, where he's helped reshape the financial future of one of the fastest growing, most misunderstood industries in the world. In this episode, we explore cannabis banking, entrepreneurship, regulation, leadership, capital markets, and what it really takes to build a business in an industry where the rules are constantly changing. This is a fascinating conversation. You don't want to miss this one.
So, EndoDNA plus BIOS. You put in the patient's genetic and biological data, and it gives you actual clinical insight. Hormone balance, sleep, inflammation, stress response, all of it. Your patients aren't all the same. Their data shouldn't be either.
Terry Mendez. How you doing, Terry?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on, and thanks for putting on a nice sweater for those of you who can't see. It's probably 105 degrees right now in LA. So Terry's cooling me down visually wearing that sweater.
Hey, I'm in DC.
Is it cold in DC?
It's not warm. It's kind of rainy. So, went with the sweater.
I wanted to ask you, you've led Fortune 500 subsidiaries and cannabis startups.
Uh-huh.
What will be the difference between those two very similar worlds?
Similar worlds. The perceptions are crazy, and the reality is they're not dissimilar in the context of the skills that you need to be successful in each of those businesses. I started my career out at Deloitte and Arthur Andersen and those types of worlds, but I really got into something called turnaround services and working with companies that had moments that matter that really changed the trajectory or inflection points of those companies. Computer Associates, Symbol Technologies, Converse Technologies. These are companies that very, very public corporate type frauds, and they're still existing or they exist in some sort today. But, even the biggest companies, the ones that you think have it all put together, they're a bunch of collections of small companies in reality. And those small companies don't have it all put together, and they're just as messy and need just as much help as a single state operator or a multi-state operator. And so it's just a matter of how you approach the problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we have some similarities in background. Like I started my career with Price Waterhouse and then PwC. So you're going out, and I was on the management consulting side, not on the accounting side. Were you on the accounting side?
I did both. I was started in the accounting side, but I wound up doing something called Grow and Defend Fortress Deloitte, which was bringing together both the Deloitte consulting team and the advisory accounting team to deliver a specialized service to our clients.
So I found it interesting what you said about these little businesses within a business, even in PW and PwC to some extent, because I left shortly after the merger. Mm-hmm. There was like you're either build out, so you're going out and getting clients, or for me, I was responsible for building the global training center part. So we do on site training instead of going out and doing what I did was go to a boot camp and get trained. And the big thing at that time when I was there was SAP. So you're actually implementing SAP, and I train people how to do it, and none of them ever succeeded when I was there. It's this notion of little businesses within a big business. So if you're handling your part well, then everything sort of falls in line. But there is a break down the line, then everything fails. So I like your analogy of doing that. So in your world of, and I think it was it Hitachi I read that you were also working with. What are the values and lessons from those early days that you got, and how can we how can you utilize some of those lessons and values now in your current business?
Look, when you're growing up in a firm like that, everyone is basically as good, if not better than you when you're sitting around the table. Everyone was a straight A student. Everyone was trying to kind of aggressively grow their careers. And at the same time, everyone had to team for success. And you had to figure out, because of the client situations, how to talk to every level of the organization at their level. And so one of the things you learn quickly is you don't talk to the board of directors at the same level that you talk to a trimmer. Not that a trimmer doesn't know what they're talking about. You should be transparent to each, but you have to modulate for your audience, and being able to figure out how to speak to every audience and influence change in every one of those audiences has been a bit of a superpower for me, to be able to go into an organization and say, this is the strategy. And at every level of the organization, making sure that everyone's talking the same way. And at the end of the day, if there are people or segments of your organization that are not bought into or contributing to this strategy, they don't really understand it fully, you haven't fully done your job. And so there's a ton of communication that goes through this, and not just saying it once, on a regular basis, being very consistent in how you speak to what they're doing every day contributes to the success that you're envisioning for the organization. That's true if you're dealing with a audit team. That's, some of my audit teams were global teams that had people in 20 countries. That's true if you had an audit team, or if you're looking at a project for a small business, or you're looking at a project for a large company. I got involved one time to implement an ERP system for a Fortune 500 company. That's hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people all saying, I know how to do it one way, and tomorrow I got to do it a different way. And I don't like you right now because you're telling me I'm doing it differently tomorrow, and it's going to be so much better. But to me, it seems so much more scary.
It's so true, because, and I relate to that, because that's what I was saying, the ERP systems and everybody with knowledge and posturing. I also like what you said about aggressive. I found the environment of, at that point, it was Big Six. I found it to be very aggressive. And instead of complimenting, and maybe this is the culture that was created, instead of creating this culture of we're a team that's working together, we're a quasi team that's working together to highlight an individual, because I'm going to step on you so I can shine, because I'm on the path and we're all on the same path to get to partner level or whatever that is. So if you turn around, there may be a knife in your back. And I really didn't like that environment.
I hated that part, but I did it very different. You spend a year when you're in those environments, those large consulting environments, you might have 12, 13 bosses in the course of a year, right? Different partners, different managers. And you're hoping at the end of the year, they remember you and they have something nice to say at the end of the year about you. And I knew that this was kind of the process. And so in a very young age, I started working with these folks, and I would keep notes of all the different things I contributed to their success. And one of my personal mottos is I relentlessly pursue your success. That's how I've done everything in my career. And so what I would do at the end of a period, I would meet with them right before what they call was a manager meeting. Right before the manager meeting, I would meet with all the managers. I would take them out to lunch, and I would pay for lunch. And I would say, hey, I hope you remember me. These are the things I did to make you successful. When you're in the meeting, it'd be wonderful if you can remember to say one or two of these things that I did to help you be successful. I'll tell you, I was in public accounting for 14 years. 13 of the 14 years, I got the highest rating.
What a great lesson. I mean, that's beautiful. I love what you said about, I always sort of tell my people in my company that I work for them. Like I'm working for you to help you, because if you're successful, everybody's successful. I'm just one person who, it says the mission and vision, all that stuff, but you guys have to implement that. So it
100%
makes total
right.
sense.
What I told my team at Safe Harbor is your job is to give me the information for me to represent you well in the public forum. Yeah. My job is to give you all the tools to be successful. And if we're working really well, there's no barrier to entry. Like my first year banker can come into my office and talk to me. Hey, I think you're missing the boat here. And, I might agree, I might not agree, but thank you for putting yourself out there and having the courage to walk into my office and have that conversation.
Yeah, it's that transparency and having that flat kind of communication style because being used to large corporations, you have too many layers and you're missing some of that information, and then there's fluff that gets to you without having the real information.
That's part of the key of transformation. I do a lot of transformation work.
Yeah,
And the key is really finding those people in the organization that know that level 10 detail, plus love the organization enough to give you the truth. Everyone else is playing a game,
yeah.
right? They're playing a game of who looks good in front of the new person. And that game's not helpful when you're trying to turn a company around, right? So you're looking for the few people that are diehards. Some of them are first employees, second employees, that'll just give it to you straight. Hey, man, I'm hoping that you come in here and you fix things because this is the trajectory of the company. And, what do I need to do to help you be successful?
Yeah, that makes total sense. I want to go back a little bit to your origin story.
Sure.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a town called Mastic Beach. Mastic Shirley is out on exit 68 on the Long Island Expressway in the middle of nowhere. It's as blue collar can be. My single family home. My mom was the ER nurse for the local hospital. It was one major hospital. And I think for the most part, the reason I stayed out of trouble is that the people that came over for Christmas holiday were police officers and firefighters and that type of stuff, because inevitably my mom helped them, with some injury, with some life saving, whatever, in that particular year. And so there was always a community of people that, kind of watched our backs. And so even when I kissed my first girl, my mom knew about it before I got home because people, yeah, you know what I mean? Like there was always like someone watching somewhere to make sure we were on the straight and narrow. And that was great because we lived in a pretty rough town in an area where it was easy to make mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. I can relate to that. I grew up in Philly, so
Fair enough.
it's I can relate to the rough area, and having good people around you made a lot of sense because I lost a lot of friends over the years to actually, made the wrong turn somewhere.
Yeah, that's all you need to do. When you're growing up in that environment, one bad decision changes the trajectory of your entire life. And
Uh,
I've just had some good people in good places.
any siblings?
I do. I have a younger sister.
So you grew up, you said single family
Yeah.
household. Eh, when you were a kid, were you into sports? Were you into
Man, I was
math?
at everything. I was a five sport player. I did wrestling. I did cross country. I ran a 450 mile. I was doing 10Ks and 5Ks. I was doing track and field. Every soccer. I played JV and I went to the junior Olympic team. I couldn't afford to go, but I made the team for goalie and soccer. I'm 5'6", and the next year I didn't even make varsity because everybody had a growth spurt.
Yeah.
So it's all good stuff. But I kept myself involved in the sports, and I sang. I sang for the church choir. I sang for a jazz choir. I was a singer early on. Haven't done that publicly since, but I'll let you know
I was gonna put you on the spot right now. Let's hear it.
that.
I wanted to ask you. You said growing up in this blue collar kind of community,
Uh-huh.
aspirations, because you're safe, but what you see around you, you have good community around you. You see everybody's working hard and making ends meet. What did you want to do sort of when you grow up? Because with the people around you, the role models are successful in their own way, but blue collar, kind of thing. And there's a struggle associated with that. Is there sort of a beacon there or something
Yeah,
that
I'll
says,
tell you, man.
I
This
don't
is
want
a
to do
good
that?
question, by the way. Great question. So I was about, I don't know, 14, 13 years old. My uncle had a baseball card shop, and I'm a huge baseball card collector. He had a baseball card shop, and I would just hang out after school there, and sometimes on the weekends, and he'd pay me $1 an hour or whatever. Maybe he'd give me a baseball card, and a guy pulls up in a Cadillac. He walks in, he does some work for hour and a half. My uncle hands him several $100, and he leaves. And I said, "What does that guy do?" He said, "That's the tax accountant." I said, "How do I do that?" Because he made $400 in an hour, And, I've never seen that kind of money made in an hour, right? It was an initial story, but in my, what is it, junior year of high school, I had some lady was supposed to take some test and she got sick, and I got tapped by the school administrator. Can you go take this test? I need someone to represent the school. Well, it was the Long Island Business Association accounting test, and I had never taken an accounting class. I came in second in the state. And so I said, oh, maybe I know something here. So they put me in that class the next semester. I did well. And the teacher asked me to go to Longwood High School, which is a high school out on Long Island, to meet with somebody called an organization called Inroads New York City. I didn't know anything about them at the time, but they placed talented minorities in corporate America. I went out there. There were 900 people interviewing for 90 jobs. I interviewed for Arthur Andersen, Coopers and Lybrand, and Philip Morris. And I got two out of the three. I didn't get Coopers and Lybrand, and I took Arthur Andersen. I was one of the first high school students ever to walk the halls of Arthur Andersen. And what I found there, because I had never seen this before, quite frankly, in the town I grew up, I was, one of maybe two or three families of color, right? So I'd never been exposed to New York City before. And I wind up working with, seeing what wealth really looked like. Arthur Andersen Partners made $2 million a year. I was a young kid, and I walked into one partner's office and I said, how do I do what you do? Because I want to do what you do. And he said, I want you to read books. You're going to do an hour and a half commute each way on the Long Island Railroad or wherever you live. You're going to spend time on the bus. I want you to be, you got to read a book a week. And I did that. In the course of, 4 years interning, I read 700 books. And that kind of set up a kind of thought process for me. But also he took me under his wing. He basically said, look at this dumb kid. I'll make him, I'll see what I can do with this guy. And so it was good to just ask somebody. Everybody wants to pay it forward. And, if you have the courage to ask, and, you might get a yes.
There's such great lessons. I'm going to ask you a question, let you think about it and comment, because you said 700 books. I'm sure you're an avid reader still.
Yeah.
What are your sort of top three that you come to mind? Don't answer it yet, because I'm going to tell you that I had a very similar situation that happened to me. I had a mentor who ended up being a mentor of mine asked me, what do you listen to when you drive to work? I said, music, man. I love music. That's my thing. He goes, so you like making other people money? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, every single time you listen to a song, I mean, this is back in the radio days,
Yeah.
and they're making a nickel or whatever that is. I'm like, yeah. What do you listen to? He goes, I listen to like self-help tapes and stuff like that. I'm like, really? Like what? So he gave me Jim Rohn, who was Tony Robbins' mentor. And I got into like reading or listening at that time, self-help. And then I got into books and Tony Robbins, and then I moved it from all that. And then I started going to, events and all that stuff. So I really think that feeding your brain with information, you never know when you might need that. It's even subconsciously like sitting in your brain. And when you're making decisions and all that other stuff, you're able to connect to some of that information that's been downloaded in your brain. So I think it's super important.
Puts it in there. I can tell you, as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, being in a room and having something to contribute, that I would tell myself, man, where'd those words come from? And where did that thought come from? I didn't have that thought last year, And
you know what else it's good at? When you're with Jeopardy. You have a bunch of useless knowledge that you're playing along. I'm like, how do I know that?
Yeah. So I mean, and it was everything. Like they had put me in front of a computer, and they said, "Here's Microsoft Excel 1.0. Figure it out." It was an upgrade from Lotus 1.2.3.
Yeah.
And I went to the library and I bought the Excel Bible. It was called the Excel Bible. I read the Excel Bible in 3 days, and in 3 days I was better at Excel than nearly everyone else in that area of the firm. And so these are crazy things. But if I had to, tell you some things that have changed my life.
Yeah. So like books, I guess books that were made the biggest impact, I guess, on you.
Well, I can tell you the number one book was a book called Tell to Win. It's about how to tell your story and how to influence through your storytelling and how movies are made. And it talks about, sometimes movies want to make you cry, they make you laugh, they make you feel something, like influence your thinking on a particularly provocative topic. And how do you do that? And then you think about it, and you're your own story, and you better be able to tell your story better than anybody else. Because if you can't tell your story, you're going to limit where you can go from a career perspective. Phenomenal book. It's a 1 day read, but every page, I've read that book every year since I got it, probably since 2000 or something. I've read it every year just to remind myself that I have to be able to tell my story well. You know, there's another one out there that it's was also fantastic when I was younger. And you forget the stories, and they're older stories, but and it's going to sound corny, but it's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I know a lot of people talk about that one, but actually do it every once in a while. Like actually just do it, and you'll see the reactions people have, and that you cared enough to prepare for the meeting with them. Like we cared enough to prepare for the meeting, so I knew something about you before I got on the phone call with you today, right? And so when you care about people, all of a sudden they care about you too, right? And you look at the people that influence society, they're giving back, right? And they, and their level of give back and pay it forward influences, communities, if not, small communities to tens of thousands, if not millions of people. So, look at that, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then lastly, I grew up in the church, and I'll tell you, I didn't read the Bible until I was about 45 years old. I've now read it 3 or 4 times. And the leadership stories, if you just listen to what you're reading and, forget about, do I agree, do I disagree, and just read it to read it, right? The leadership stories in that are phenomenal. And so, story after story, book after book, there's stories about courage, about leadership, and how to implement and care about people beyond yourself.
Yeah, love that list. I think How to Win Friends, Influence People. It should be taught in school. Like they should be given that book to students
100%.
instead of a lot of the other things. So, did you end up going to school, like university and
I
all
mean,
that?
it's one of the best stories of my career. You know, I was going to Long Island University, CW Post Campus. I
Yeah.
got a half-track scholarship, but because I started working at Arthur Andersen over the summer, I got introduced to the gyro and the knish. And $2, you get a knish and a soda, or a gyro and a soda. And in order to be a competitive runner, you have to do 1,000 miles over the summer. And I was running in Central Park, and it wasn't a very safe place. David Dinkins was the mayor at the time, and I was living at my grandmother's house. And in Spanish, she would tell me that I'm going to get sexually assaulted. I'll say, be politically correct, while running. So I was kind of scared of running in the park by myself. And I'm eating this gyro and knish every day because it was cheap. And before I knew it, I went from 107, 110 pounds to 140 pounds, and I lost my half scholarship. Okay. But I'm, working my second summer at Arthur Andersen. I'm working across from the global head of human resources, a guy named Alan Rosenblatt. And one day, Alan comes over to me and he hands me the application to the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. And I say, Alan, that's cool. Let me look it up. I look it up in Mosaic or Netscape or whatever the browser was then. It's 36 grand a year. It's $300 application fee. I walk back into his office. I said, my mom doesn't even make this a year, and I don't have 300 bucks for the application fee, but appreciate that you think so highly of me. He looked at me as sternly as you can look at a young kid. I was probably 18. And he pointed to the door and he said, I'm pretty sure I told you to fill this out. I didn't ask you. Like, get out. So I filled it out. I filled out the whole thing. Handed it back to him. Put the weekend on it, handed it back to him on Monday, left it early in the morning on his desk, try to avoid him because I wasn't sure what he was going to tell me next. Around Thanksgiving, I get a acceptance package in the mail. It was like 10 o'clock at night. You're in college, you're not checking the mail in normal times. And so, like 10 o'clock at night, I go check the mail, giant package in the mailbox. I'm like, what is this? Open it up. And it's probably the first time I remember actually breaking down and crying and saying, like, I've never seen somebody be this nice to me. So I call him up 10 o'clock at night, totally hoping he doesn't pick up the phone. Of course, he picks up the phone. And I said, why do you do this? And he goes, hey, don't ask me why, but I made an appointment at the financial aid office for you. It's this time. Don't be late and don't embarrass me. And he hung up. Okay. It's Arthur Andersen culture, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I get out to the Wharton School. My mom drives me down there, and the guy's opening up the door for early in the morning. It was 8 in the morning. He's opening
Yeah.
the door, and we're going up like a handicap ramp. And he turns around and says, "You must be Mr. and Mrs. Mendez." And my mom, without even saying anything, says, "I don't know why we're here. You're just trying to make us poor people feel poor." And he's, without skipping a beat, he says, "Ma'am, the hard part your son already did. He got accepted. It's my job to make sure he can come here." And I transferred mid-year 1995 to the Wharton School, and they didn't accept a single one of my credits. So I was basically starting college over. But I graduated on time and I joined Arthur Andersen.
See, I love that. And but so when I was in PwC, no, PW, they actually had a mini MBA at Wharton, and they paid for me to go there as
Nice.
well.
I
So
didn't know that about you. Look at that. We're
we have
alumni.
a Wharton connection. Yeah, I didn't go there for under. I went to Temple
Okay.
undergrad, but yeah, it was so
Yeah, I
we have
think
a Philly connection too.
Donald Trump Jr. was a year behind me, and Elon Musk was getting his executive MBA. We had the same couple of same classes. I wish I made friends with him.
Yeah, well, it's not too late, man. Reach
There
out.
you go.
So all this, how did you transition into the cannabis business?
Yeah, so in gosh, I think it was 2019. Cohn Resnick, if you know Cohn Resnick, they're a professional accounting firm, and we had
Yeah.
done a ton of work with Cohn Resnick, and I knew many of the partners. They called me up and said, "We're working with these two owners, and they're struggling to turn a profit. We have some ideas to help them, but they're struggling to even understand the ideas we're presenting." And they knew that I was pretty good at, talking at all levels. And they asked me to fly out there and meet with these two owners. And so I met with the owners. Before I knew it, when I got out there, the first thing they asked me was, do I know how to ride a horse? And we went horseback riding first. I was covered head to toe in mud, and I was in a suit and tie, and now I'm having a conversation with them about work. And then they invite me to sing karaoke. And I think at the end of the day, they just wanted to make sure I was cool because Cohn Resnick already told them I knew my stuff, right? So they just wanted to know if they could spend time with me. It turned out, that I thought I could help them, but my family again was a very religious family, and so I went to my uncle, who's kind of the patriarch of the family, and I said, "Look, I can help these ladies, right? But this is cannabis, and I've heard the pastor say that's not so cool. And so, like, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, as long as you're paying your tithes, I think you're taking from the devil to give to Jesus, so go for it." Now, I've learned a lot, and he's learned a lot in the 6 years or so, and so all the biases are gone. But that was the initial comment, and I jumped in, turned that company around. It was just sold, I think, last month to an investor, but it survived, and it thrived for a period of time in Colorado, and it was my very first cannabis experience, and it was right in the beginning of COVID. It's a really difficult time to turn around a company when you're not even allowed on the road to go visit the grow.
So how do you turn a company around? Like, not you don't have to go into a full like
Yeah.
here's my 100-point plan. What are the things that you look for? Because I think look, we'll talk about banking and all that stuff. The cannabis industry is has its own interesting challenges above and beyond what other businesses do. It's very difficult to compare the cannabis business to traditional businesses, but also they also do a lot of the same things. So what do you look at? What are some of the
So
things that you
imagine that
consider?
I was entirely naive to every problem in the cannabis industry, right?
Mhm.
And I looked at the problems with, at the time, 15, 20 years of, 50 other industries behind me, you know? And, for example, I look at that. Well, let me answer your question first. The first thing you look at is do people know who their customer are? And
Yeah.
I sit down and, I listen to them explain to me the customer, and their customer in their eyes was the consumer of the product. And I had to explain to them that the customer was not the consumer of the product. Their actual person who pays them is a dispensary partner. And we coined the term dispensary partner for that company. And I said, the dispensary has to make the choice to put you on their shelves. Then you can access the consumer. But absent a dispensary partner, you don't have a product to sell because you have to get on those shelves, right? So what are you doing to treat your dispensary partners differentiated from everyone else? If you're going out there with your menu of stuff and it's just like, here's my menu, you're not doing anything different. And so you're competing on effectively a commodity, on who has the best weed. And we all know everyone has the best weed. And so, and so that's not the right way to compete. And so we created a different mechanism to compete for that shelf space that was actually very effective. And then I pulled from other industries. For example, in the oil and gas industry, they have firm fixed price contracting, right? And if you live in New York or on the East Coast and you have an oil burner, you buy, at the beginning of the season, you sign up with your own gas company for $4 a gallon, and you pay $4 a gallon the whole friggin' winter, right? If oil goes to $5 a gallon, you win. If it goes to $3 a gallon, you lose, but you pay $4. And back then there was a high degree of volatility in the pricing of flour, right? One day it's $1,900 a pound, the next day is $1,200, the next day is $800, the next day is $1,500, right? And so I went out there with some firm fixed pricing, and I said, I'm going to do this on a handshake. There's no federal regulation, there's no uniform commercial code, nothing like that. But let's see if we can fix the volatility in the industry. And by fixing the volatility, if somebody screws me at the end of the day and they don't want to buy from me when the prices are lower, right? Then you don't deal with that person again. But there was a good degree of folks that just appreciated the fact that I came to the table with the solution. Even the idea of, you can't accept credit cards. To me, that was like mind blowing. Like, what do you mean? Right? That's dumb. Right? And they said, well, MasterCard and Visa says no. I said, so what? And they said, why? What do you mean, so what? I said, have you guys are about my age, right? In the 90s, didn't everybody have this massive pocketbook with a brick inside of it? And inside the brick was 700 store cards for everyone that your mom got 5% discount on the store card because she walked in to pick your store, right? Well, you can do the same thing. The reason MasterCard and Visa exists is because those companies went out of business by giving credit that they shouldn't have given credit to people that couldn't, handle the credit. But, today a credit analyst will cost you 80 grand. And so you can have a wonderful credit analyst backing a $2 million, $3 million, $4 million line of credit. And then you issue, store cards, and let's do store card processing. And so we went in that direction. And so there's just different thoughts that come from different industries and bring it in. We actually went back and looked at Philip Morris's, public filings from the 70s to see what they did during Prohibition and see if we can pull some thoughts out of that.
Love it. I mean, that's exactly thinking out of the box. And and every other cliche term that I can think of, but it really is that. And it's sort of the vast experiences that you have in other industries and other things that you did. You can bring all those to any industry without actually having industry insight and implement some of the changes.
There are great growers out there. I can't grow tomatoes.
Yeah.
So there are great growers out there. There's great people that can do magic with the science kits and extraction capabilities, right? And you learn a ton just by listening to these folks.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they need someone that sits on top and says, "Are we making the right decisions every day for our customers and making sure we know who our customers are?"
No, 100% agreed. I always say I have a brown thumb, and I was in the cannabis industry for like 30 years, and growing is not my area of expertise. That's why there's other people who love what they do and they do it well. Banking wise, so Safe Harbor, it is able to succeed where others have failed, but this whole thing with banking has been like a really stubborn bottleneck in the industry. And we talk about 280E and all that stuff. We don't have to get into the details of each one of those, but how do you address this industry where you have traditional banking, but now you have to do things a little bit differently and differentiate yourself from other people that are shiny objects over here to sustain growth and really grow your business and help other businesses?
I was so excited to work with Safe Harbor. First of all, let me tell you how I got involved because it's an incredible story. I was at a conference in Vail. I just came back from that conference yesterday. I flew in this morning, right? Same conference a year ago. And Sunday Siegfried sat next to me, or I sat next to her at a dinner. And we got into a conversation about, the challenges of being a public company CEO or executive. And she asked me the next day, can I sign an NDA and can I help her with a strategic thought? And we went through a process and I helped her with that. And during that process, she said, can you present this to my board? Present it to the board. And then she came back to me and said, well, I like to retire. What about you taking my job and you doing this for us? Holy smokes. So from networking to not knowing you, never heard about Safe Harbor before. But one of the first things I said to her is, look, I've been in cannabis now 5, 6 years. I'm headquartered out of Colorado. Everyone and their mother has tried to sell something to me because I was the CEO of an MSO. And I've never heard of you. How can that happen? Right. So there's a marketing problem day one. Like that was like dinner conversation 1.0. Hey, free advice. You must have a marketing problem because I've never heard of you. Okay.
For sure.
I think that kind of said like, hey, he's willing to tell the truth. He's willing to tell me the hard stuff, which a lot of people, appreciate. And so we went through this process. And one of the things I realized is that not only did Safe Harbor have a marketing problem, Safe Harbor had an identity problem. Safe Harbor was the original fundamental banking cannabis. Sunday was the one to go in front of Congress. She was investigated by everyone, DOJ, FBI, everyone. We've been audited 30 times. We've passed all the regulations. It's just an amazing, amazing story. She wrote a book on it. Okay. And we went public in 2022. But when we went public in 2022, the nature of the company changed. We went from being a cannabis bank to being a cannabis bank services company. And we had processed at that time about $23 billion of cannabis transactions. Today it's around 26, $27 billion, right? And I'm looking at the platform not from the eyes of a banker. Sunday spent her whole career as a banker. And I said, you have an unbelievable gold mine. And the gold mine is you're sitting on incredible data. You need to know your customer. You need to know Bank Secrecy Act stuff. You're looking for anti-money laundering. What all that means is that I know every employee that you hire and fired. I know every vendor you've ever paid. I know every customer that's ever paid you. And can you imagine if I can take that and create a services solution around that? Can you imagine for a second, like, hey, you might not like, you might love interviewing me or anybody, but you might not love editing, right? And so you say, hey, man, get somebody else to do the editing. This is not my cup of tea. Well, in the cannabis industry, I've met hundreds of owners that are not great accountants. They don't love HR. They hate IT and cybersecurity and access control and monitoring cameras and making sure, you have enough PPE, protective gear like that's not their cup of tea. Well, now we've created something interesting at Safe Harbor where we can do that for you through partnership and through solutioning. We're able to do that for you. And what that allows us to do is become a little more sticky. There are 682 cannabis banks out there, right? We help those banks be successful. We're doing the back office for them, right? And so now I have to sit down and say, my customer is who? My customer is the bank because they pay me. Their customer is the cannabis related business. And if I love their customer, they're going to love me back. And so how do I love them differently, right? And so that meant for me, employee banking. Let me bank the employees. I've had my mortgage called. That was a painful experience. I've had my investment accounts locked up. Right? Hey, let me cannabis friendly employee banking. Let's do it. Hey, let's do things like earned wage access so that we can give you a card that says, here's your money if you need it before your paycheck is due. Let's work with the payroll companies. And so step by step, we're creating something that allows the cannabis related business to understand that not only are we providing and facilitating your banking capabilities, but we're actually going to help you be successful. I'm actually bringing the skill sets that help me turn around an MSO and help me turn around an SSO and .com companies, et cetera, to the single state operator or to the small multi-state operator who can't generally afford, $300,000 executive here and there.
Yeah, no, it's super smart to be able to utilize data. I mean, I have a genetics company, and when
Uh-huh.
people ask me like, "What's your exit?" I'm like, I don't. My only exit was my entry. My idea was to build the largest repository of data. Like, I want to have data on efficacy. That's
Mhm.
my exit and that's my entry. In the beginning, this is how I'm going to get that data. That's the value, and they can do so many different things with efficacy data. So I
Yeah.
think it's really smart to be able
Imagine
to.
if like I can look in the Midwest and say everybody's buying from vendor overseas, call it the 510 vape carts. I know those are out of vogue and people
Uh,
do all in ones, but let's use that as an example. During Chinese New Year, you're going to go out and buy a 25,000 cart order. Well, what if I could take those orders across 25, 30, 50, 100 different vendors buying from the same guy? Kind of, and, unlock a whole new level of discount for you by, managing that. And then because we're your bank, being able to go and say, hey, have you ever bought a baseball card on eBay? Yeah, you can basically say eBay Protect, and if it's a fraudulent card, I can go give it back. Well, if there's not enough money in the account, maybe I've negotiated with that cannabis related business to be able to pull the money from their account because, they wanted this extra level of discount. All sorts of cool things we can do by merging financial expertise, HRIT expertise with the bank services expertise. And that's just a, small idea.
no, it's a great example, and like with fintech in general and the AI, innovations that are going in AI, you have all this data, and you maybe there's programming, etc. But now with AI and machine learning, how do you envision leveraging that to be able to start parsing out and creating some of these other
It's an
services?
incredibly powerful tool. So I'll give you an example. I grew up and I started programming with C++ and Visual Basic in the 90s, right? Late 80s, 90s. That's kind of what you learned on my Commodore 64. Okay, so um, the other day I was trying to figure out how to implement robotic process automation for a particular process. And in order to get around multi-factor authentication, I needed to create a Python code. I didn't even know what Python was. I went into Claude, which is an AI generator, and I said, create the Python code to do this. And I had a nice prompt, and it gave me the code, and I stuck it in wherever it was supposed to go, and it told me where to put it. And all of a sudden, I was done. So something that I would have paid a programmer probably a couple $1,000s to go do was 35 seconds of work on Claude, $20 a month. You know what I mean? Access to it. From our perspective, today we look at hundreds of CTRs and SARs, and every time you put more than $10,000 in your account, we have to create a document that allows the government to know that you put more than $10,000 in your account, particularly cash. All of that can start getting automated as regulation and technology kind of merge and mesh, right? Ability to look into owners' backgrounds and get some of the information to make sure you're dealing with proper people. All of that stuff becomes instantaneous. Even like a business card. If you gave me your business card, I have a lot of AI technology at my fingertips. I click an AI tool and it copies your business card. It gives me your entire life resume. Like
Yeah.
in 30 seconds, I know if you have something in common with me and I have something to talk to you about. You know what I mean? And so all of that stuff we can start to integrate. How do you do great customer service? And we have bankers that have been with us for 10 years. But when you have hundreds upon hundreds of clients, it's hard to know everybody. Really cool when that banker phone number comes up and now you have the guy's resume in front of you and you know what Rosie's done and this and you can, hey, Charlie, what's going on with this other business you had here? Or, hey, I see your financial statements are going up or going down. Do you need help? Hey, I understand that I saw your press release and it all kind of comes into your CRM system. So you engage that, customer service person at a much, higher level of tool set, right? Remember what I said before, I give you the tools for you to be successful, right? And so those are the types of tools. It starts with this, look, and I tell everyone, I've done a lot of automation in my career. The first thing you go to is the highest level of automation. Is the process fixed and can it be automated with whatever the latest and greatest tool is? Back in the day, it was RPA, robotics process automation. Today it's AI with LLMs and bot configurations. Really cool tools, but the process has to work first before you can tell someone to go automate it. But if you can't automate it, then the next best solution or your next best alternative is a low cost center of excellence. And I've built low cost center of excellence in Krakow, Poland, and Singapore, and Malaysia, and Hyderabad, right? And so, can we create even in Mississippi, there's areas in the U.S. that are not the most expensive places. You don't have to hire because you're in California doesn't mean your whole team has to be in California, you know. And so, if you can figure those types of things out, that's your low cost center of excellence. The last thing you do is hire someone that sits next to you. Because again, you're in California, you're in Denver, you're in New York. You know what a good controller costs in New York? 300 grand, man. That's a lot of eights to get a 300 grand controller who's just going to tell you if you had a good month or not a good month.
No, I hear you. No, one of my careers was working for a company called Cognizant Technology Solutions.
Sure.
So I was director of strategic alliances. So I did a lot of the on-site, offshore kind of negotiations. Exactly. Outsourcing non-critical applications and all that stuff. That's the key to a lot of these big
Do
companies.
what you love and then give it what you don't love to someone who actually loves that. That's
Perfect. Love that. So a lot of the solutions that you build in place, have you thought about, or is there a plan to sort of reach beyond cannabis to other like underserved industries?
Well, I'm sitting here today in Washington, D.C. I'm going tomorrow to the Crypto Business Conference, and thinking about what it means for crypto. And we're a Nasdaq listed company. You've seen about 120-ish companies now become de facto crypto exchanges, where like ETFs, where people put a ton of money in and they hire XYZ person to be the treasurer of crypto. So looking to see what that looks like. Payment processing is changing dramatically. It's getting cheaper. So what does the democratization of that look like? Are you on Ethereum? Are you going to do XRP for international transactions and Swift transactions? So there's a ton of potential opportunity. I'm on the early stages of learning. I try to learn quick. And the way I do it is I put some money behind it. I dropped $8,000 on XRP, and I figured I'd have to learn everything before before I lose my money, I have to learn. Know what I mean? And
Skin in the game. That's what you got to do.
You know what I mean? It's not a lot, but it's enough to make sure that every day I watch a YouTube video or a TikToker or somebody who's smarter than me. So I'm going to surround myself with smart people tomorrow and the next day and try to learn a little bit about what's the opportunity.
Love that. So when I started in the cannabis business, I not started, but like when dispensaries and all that stuff, I used to have hair, and in being in this industry, it left me. So the high pressure. First of all, you're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with money, you're dealing with regulations in cannabis. How do you stay calm, or what do you have any any rituals that you do yourself to kind of get yourself back and reset?
I'm going to sound like an odd duck, but it works for me. Okay. I'm up every day at 4:30. From 4:30 to 5:30, I do two things. I say a prayer, I read the Bible, and I get ready. I eat my breakfast, get ready for my workout. 5:30 to 6:30, I'm working out. 6:30 forward, I'm working. And I work as hard as I need to work. Right, and put the kids on the bus or whatever, say goodbye, and then you're working. But you've kind of set yourself up for success. And when you start early, that's the period of time at 6:30 to like 9:30, where you have full focus capability. Once you get past that period of time, everybody wants your time, and being able to control who gets your time, and what's the best use of your time, is a difficult thing. And ultimately, you got to remember something. You can control only what you can control. All the rest, they say, cast on God, because you can't control that, right? And so if you worry about the uncontrollable, you're wasting a lot of time. Control what you can control, create the probabilities of success, and if it was meant to be, it's going to happen.
Have you been contacted or voluntarily contributed to anything with some of these decisions that the federal government's making to reschedule cannabis, possibly?
Yeah, look, so not that I've been contacted. I mean, we pay some folks to be plugged into these things, and make sure we understand the implications to our business. Interest rates mean a lot to us. Okay, bank services company make money off the banks. Banks make money the higher the interest rates are. So, what I can charge a bank is limited by how much money they make out for a depositor, right? And so that's one aspect. Another aspect is the way that banks have been able to lower their fees. At one point, some people still are. I just learned that this last couple of days, still paying $1,500, $2,000 per account per month for their banking, right? The way that some banks have been able to offset that is that because interest rates have been at all-time highs, they've been giving back by lowering the account fees, right? So for the most part, our fees are down to like $250 a month. It's still more than what you pay by going to a regular bank, but it's nowhere close to what you were paying 5, 6 years ago, right? And so when I think about rescheduling, to get to your question, um, I think what's going to happen is there's a big lobby between pharmaceuticals and conservatives and others where you might, I hopefully not, I'll say this out loud, but remember when Biden came out and said, I'm going to make it federally, legal, and nobody's going to be in jail. And it was kind of like a show.
Yeah,
But there's like 2 or 3 people that were actually in jail at the federal level, for cannabis
exactly.
infractions.
Yeah.
It could be that where ultimately instead of being Schedule 3, which is what people are hoping for, or descheduling, it winds up Schedule 2, which is a lot to do about nothing,
Yeah.
right? So hopefully that's not where it goes, but it could go there. Best case scenario, I think, is you wind up Schedule 3 and a default to the existing state rules. Because if you're Schedule 3 and you have to deal with non-existent federal rules or the rules applicable to pharmaceuticals, you're going to basically put everybody out of business, right? So,
Yeah, you can't have a dispensary model with a Schedule 3. Exactly.
right. And so it has to default to the state level. I really enjoyed reading, and I think it was bipartisan, which was another thing, and I thought it was smart, which was the States Act 2.0. I
Yeah.
actually wrote an article about that was picked up, me and Michael Bronstein was picked up by my American banker. And, what was interesting about that is what is Trump and the administration really all about? They're all about giving power back to the states and smaller federal government. And if you're going to say give power back to the states, well, States Act 2.0 did that. It also allowed for interstate commerce. It cured 280E. It had a number of features that, if you can get some alignment around that, I think might actually be better. None of these things, though, dropping from Schedule 1, 2 to 3, even making it, federally legal, or States Act 2.0, none of that changes the bank regulations. You still have to know your customer. You still have anti-money laundering. You still have BSA, and you're still going to have it at a level of detail that's beyond normal stuff. Like the cannabis company is going to be scrutinized more than the New York City deli, right? And for obvious reasons. If I'm a regulator and I'm going to go into a bank, what am I going to look at? I'm going to look at the things that have the highest level of potential risk, right? And so, Safe Harbor's business is improved significantly if any of those situations occur.
Sure. I'm going to shift subjects for a little bit and talk about mostly music. I have some questions I ask.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
But before I jump into music with you,
Uh-huh.
what's the most valuable baseball card that you own?
So I haven't, well, it's probably the 1992 Derek Jeter rookie card that's on an aluminum foil base.
Yeah.
The card sold for $100,000 that day. I went on eBay and I bought a BCCG 10 version, and I bought it for $500. And I think today it's about $5,000, right? Because it's basically a lotto ticket. Like if you send it into a real grading company, it could be
Yeah.
$100,000 card, it could be a $2,000 card. So it's kind of like a lotto ticket.
Yeah, you get it
But
graded.
so that's cool. And I have I collected Pete Rose. Go figure. So I have every Pete Rose card from 1963 until 1997, and the 1963 rookie card, the one I have, is about $3,000, $4,000.
That's awesome. Yeah, uh, I'm a Phillies fan.
Uh-huh.
So I have the whole 1980 World Series team
Sure.
when they won. So
That's Mike Schmidt. That's Pete Rose. That's
Pete
the whole,
Rose,
you know,
Carlton, yeah,
yeah, you had
all
a
those
good
guys.
team.
All right. So if you remember, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Very first concert. Um, I went to see a Christian artist called Carmen. at Nassau Coliseum. And then I went to see with my now wife, I went to see Bon Jovi at Jones Beach. So
Oh,
it was a couple of years in between that, though.
what was the last concert you attended?
Oh gosh. Wasn't that long ago. I took my daughter to see Shawn Mendes at Red Rocks.
That's cool. Red Rock's great place to see a
Yeah.
show.
And
Um,
I said, hey, that's my cousin, man. That's my, Mendes,
yeah,
And
are you guys
not,
related?
not at all, but
But
I
we'll
was very
take it.
funny with that.
For the next year, you could only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to remember the name of the album. It could be Bon Jovi or Shawn Mendes, whatever, just the
Uh,
artist. What would be those 5?
I listen to a lot of different music. It's not really about an artist. It's more about how the song influences what I'm thinking, right? But I grew up kind of a rap kid, in the 80s and 90s. So LL Cool J and all those folks, Slick Rick the Ruler and all that kind of stuff. So every once in a while, I'll go back and I'll listen to LL Cool J because that gets my kind of blood pumping, you know. There's what's his name? Chris Tomlin is another one. Chris Tomlin is a series of Christian music that I love. It's absolutely fantastic stuff. And I generally listen to stations like Sirius stations. So I'm on the stations, but I don't know that I can name 5 albums.
Okay, fair enough. So, final question for you.
Uh,
Please describe what your room looked like when you were growing up.
I was pretty strict, man. My mom was tough. So it was, I had a very small, a very small room, a twin size bed that had some shelving underneath it. I had a computer on the right hand, so my Commodore 64, which within arm's reach of the bed, because there's like maybe 3 feet between the bed and the computer desk, and a little black and white television that, with the banana ears. That was my room. And I had a closet, and I was a little handy. And so I built the whole, like out of spare wood that I found all over the place, I built a whole shelving system to give myself some room to put sneakers and stuff in the closet.
Any
That had
art?
to be neat,
a-
otherwise it was like you get in trouble, you know.
Any art or posters or anything on the walls that you can remember? Or you weren't
Boys to
allowed?
Men. I had all sorts of Boys to Men, Tiffany and Debbie Gibson,
Yeah,
because they were pretty. That kind of stuff.
yeah.
Um, and I was the art that I did back then was kind of like today's graffiti or yesterday's graffiti, but it
Graffiti.
was graffiti, right? And then you had graffiti contests in the school, and you tried not to, get yourself arrested. But here nor there.
So, did you have a tag, like a graffiti name or a tag that you used, or?
Yeah, they called me Renster, Renster, and I had a whole kind of way of doing it. It was a
So
play, like the beginning of my name and cut it to the back of my name and that kind of stuff.
that's funny, man. I never really talked about this, but I was sick, SIK. So I used to
There you
tag
go.
sick back in the day. Uh, Terry,
I,
where can people find out more about you? Where can they engage with Safe Harbor? Anything else that you want to share?
yeah, so we're revamping everything. Look, every aspect or every perception you might have had of Safe Harbor in the last 7, 8 months, should have changed. We're building lending capabilities. We're building, enhanced banking capabilities, financial service capabilities, and a lot of it's available today. And so I tell people to reach out to me because the website's not updated yet. It'll be updated in September, right? By the end of this month, you'll have a full suite of things that you can say, oh, okay, I can figure this out. But if you need something now, direct the attention to me, and it's easy. Terry.Mendez at shfinancial.org. So that's the easiest way. You could always go to our website. Again, that's shfinancial.org. But we're a flat organization now. So, I like the transparency. I like being flat, and I love talking to my customers. And that's how you make money for everybody is making sure you're plugged in.
And for my audience, since you're listening to this far, I guess you enjoy the content. So if you do, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow, all those things. And thank you for buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal. And there is a new book that's coming out. It's music related. Just stay tuned for that. Uh, Just want and thank you for all the reviews. It's great feedback that I'm getting. Not everything is a 5-star. It's fine. You learn from those reviews as well. Terry, I really want to thank you for being on. It's a pleasure. It's a really good conversation. I love what you're doing, and I love your energy as well. So thank you for being on.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks again for having me, and best of luck with your books.
Thank you.
Take care.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.